Welcome to Friday's time of solitude and silence. A daily opportunity to draw aside from the business of life and make space for ourselves so that we might be kind to ourselves. And for those of us who would name ourselves as Christian, to spend this time in the presence of our loving God, just to be with him. And so our time begins with that 2 minutes of silence. We just think about our breathing, perhaps, just to focus on ourselves, to think of our breathing, be conscious of how we're feeling, deliberately allowing our body to relax as we enter this time. And so today's Bible reading comes from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 16, beginning at verse 21. From that time on, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed on the third day and then be raised to life. He must be killed and on the third day be raised to life. Peter, one of his disciples, took him aside and began to rebuke him. "Never, Lord," he said, "this shall never happen to you." Jesus turned and said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." It's as though Jesus saw in those moments of Peter a darker force at work. Our devotion today, our devotional thoughts, come from a gentleman called Leighton Ford, and he says this: "The Apostle Peter had a passionate heart for Jesus, but he was also rash, proud, immature, and inconsistent. His impulsiveness and stubbornness are evident throughout the Gospels. Yet Jesus patiently led Peter to a crucifixion of his self-will. in order that he might experience genuine resurrection life and power. When I am still, compulsion, that is what somebody calls that business, which is a blasphemous anxiety to God's work, blasphemous anxiety to do God's work for him. When I'm still, that compulsion gives way to, here's an old-fashioned word, compunction, the idea of being pricked or punctured. That is, God can break through the many layers with which I protect myself so that I can hear his word and be poised to listen. In perpetual motion, I can mistake the flow of my adrenaline for the moving of the Holy Spirit. I can live in the illusion that I am ultimately in control of my destiny and my daily affairs. Say that bit again, that's quite deep, isn't it? In perpetual motion, I can mistake the flow of my adrenaline for the moving of the Holy Spirit. I can live in the illusion that I am ultimately in control of my destiny and my daily affairs. The French philosopher and mathematician Blaise Pascal observed that most of our human problems come because we don't know how to sit still in our own room for an hour. So our question: what might be one of your busyness blocks that stops you from listening and communing immediately with the living God? What might be one way your busyness blocks you from listening and communing immediately with the living God? What gets in the way? So as we continue to spend this time in quiet, 2 more minutes of silence to reflect on that question, or maybe something else that God just places on our mind as we continue then in silence. Lord, forgive me for running my life without you today. I offer my anxieties to you now. as best I can. Help me to be still, to surrender to your will, and to rest in your loving arms during this day. This I pray in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.